Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're at. It is the Earthmaster out here on this Wednesday night, July 5th, 2023. It is about 11:07 p.m. West Coast time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe. Let's see what we have. Looks like some earthquake activity into the state of Alaska with a 1.0. We are watching a little swarm of activity here in the Iceland area. Quite a few fours coming in into the area as listed up here on the USGS map. Right around a couple different volcanoes. Some of this earthquake activity relatively shallow. The largest so far looks like a few 4.5s. Now I did pull up the EMSC model here showing the last 24 hours of earthquake activity, and it's kind of in a broad region, not specifically around any independent volcano out there. And a quick search of the Iceland volcanoes shows everything currently calm as far as any elevated earthquake or volcanic activity here across the Iceland area. So just kind of watching this. It is out here in an area that has seen a volcanic activity in the past, but we'll continue to watch this. This is the last 24 hours here of the EMSC earthquake data here. So last hour does show a couple of the smaller quakes there in the region. Last 48 hours, of course, there's a little bit of a confined movement here to the Puerto Rico area, or the Iceland area. Just kind of watching it, folks, seeing how this plays out. Again, there's a couple different volcanoes here that have been specifically active in the past couple years. We'll just continue to watch that and see how this plays out as far as the elevated movement goes. Further down south into the North Atlantic Ocean here, we've got 4.3 off the Azores Island area. That's just off the plate boundary, about 10 kilometers deep. Also a little bit of movement here down south into the, it says North Atlantic Ocean, but this is kind of I would call this a little bit further south. Central Mid-Atlantic Ridge area, seen a 4.8 early this morning into this little fracture zone. So we're seeing a little bit of elevated seismic activity here across the Atlantic Ocean in the last 24 hours. Just kind of keeping an eye on things here throughout the area. Puerto Rico region, of course, around this swarming area, things are lighting up kind of crazy. No major movement, but it has been showing a little bit of seismic elevated activity with some 2s and 3s. The one earthquake up here away from the swarming area, 3.7 earlier this morning. Of course, over the last week or so, we have been seeing a handful of earthquake activity across the Puerto Rico Trench, a little bit further up north than the swarming area. So just kind of watching this. This is a very sensitive area in terms of earthquake stress and buildup. Across the South America region, the latest earthquake activity shows a 4.6. Argentina, about 45 kilometers deep. Prior to that, earlier this afternoon, well, late afternoon, we did see a deeper earthquake here, 5.8 into the Chile area. That's one of the larger quakes here in the last 30 days in this region. Go over here to the largest magnitude, and as you can see here, we've had about 32 earthquakes of at least 4.5 magnitude and above, with the 5.8 today as the largest, and that is a little bit on the deeper side here into the Peru-Chile Trench. That could be a very good indicator here of some stress building up across that subduction zone. Let's see what we got here for the states. Texas rocking and rolling out here. It looks like around the Pecos, Texas area. I didn't quite make it out there this past week. I spent a lot of time up here around the Gulf with a little bit of R&R. Then I made my way across the San Antonio area up around Midland, Lubbock, and even just a little bit north of here around Plainview. But I kind of wanted to check out the Pecos, Texas area, but I didn't need to. I already know what's out here. There's a lot of oil fields out here in the Permian Basin area and beyond. So that's where a lot of activity is taking place here today. It looks like last 24 hours. Quite a few twos out here northwest of the Pecos, Texas area. Satellite view, folks. I mean, we can bring this in every single day, or we could just show it on occasion. But there's a lot of wastewater disposal wells, a lot of pumping operations out here across this region that does see, quite a bit of earthquake activity out here. It's a no-brainer. There's a lot of earthquake activity that occurs around the oil fields. That's the facts, ma'am. All right, let's see what else we got out here. Not a whole lot throughout Yellowstone, but let's just give a quick glance here across Yellowstone just to make sure. That is, it looks like we're seeing a little earthquake activity there. That 5.8, I believe that's the 5.8 into the South America region earlier. That did show up here across a few stations. I'm only getting a handful of stations here that are showing activity. But as far as Yellowstone specific activity goes, it's a very quiet for now. Pacific Northwest, a little bit of movement here across the Bickleton area. It looks like 1.4 earlier this morning. The Oregon area, pretty quiet. Northern California, of course, kind of watching this here as we have been seeing elevated tremor activity. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tremor and see what we got. Back down to nothing. Notice that? Zero epicenters of tremor. And if you look at the Northern California map, the last earthquake here was a 3.5, Lake Almanor. Prior to that, things calmed down. Let's see. Let's go to the newest. Things have definitely calmed down here in terms of earthquake activity following the lack of tremor into the Cascadia. So things are taking a little break out here along the North American and the Pacific Plate boundary, but definitely we'll continue to watch that. This activity here across the Clear Lake volcanic field, Cobb Mountain region, this has just been, it's ongoing. This is similar to what we would see in the oil fields, but this is in a whole different world. This is hydrothermal operations here. There's a whole specific operation that involves injecting raw sewage below into the heated surface of this area to create energy and steam. Steam that creates the energy. So humans and their brilliant ideas. I'm not even joking. Right? So anyway, there's quite a bit of earthquake activity occurring around the Clear Lake volcanic field here today. That's the hydrothermal operations in full swing. Backing out of here, let's see what else we have. Bay Area, fairly quiet. Only a handful of smaller earthquakes. And Southern California, well, we're coming up. Actually, this is a... what is that? Has it been 4 years already since the Ridgecrest earthquakes? 2019, July 5th, 2019, we had a series of earthquakes out here, 6.4, then a little bit larger earthquake activity following that. And thousands of earthquake aftershocks and pre-quakes that occurred back here about 4 years ago. That's crazy. It's been already 4 years. Unbelievable. For now, only 2 earthquakes there, a 1.7 and a 1.1, it looks like. Getting a little bit of activity further to the northwest here into the Olancha area, it looks like 2.2 and a 1.5. Not really seeing any major earthquake activity here across the southern portion of the state, although a slight swarm occurring down here south of El Centro. north of Calixto area, it looks like, near Heber, it looks like. 2.3, 1.7, and 1.6, 1.6, all within the last few hours here. This activity occurring about 10 to 14 kilometers deep in a little swarm fashion. Now, this is the area that has seen some previous swarming activity, but also we did see some movement into the Gulf of California here recently with a I believe we've seen a 4-pointer here within the last hour. Let me pull up the EMSC data once again. I'm still kind of working on the update there for the EMSC on the globe. I want to get that up and going, but goodness, it's just been a crazy day. There is the 4.8 coming in earlier. If you look though, it's a July 6th time frame. That's a UTC time of 0435, which means it just came in. It looks like a couple hours ago or so into that area of the Gulf of California. So things are kind of elevated here across this area of the North American plate. U.S. or at least, the USGS not really showing any of that activity. So we're missing out on the, the big picture of what's going on. So a little bit of activity in the Gulf of California, elevated movement here in the southern portion of the state of California. So things kind of ramping up out here. It's been awfully quiet, but it looks like things are starting to pick up here across the southern portion of the state. Continue to watch that. All right, out into the Pacific, north we go into Alaska. Mostly smaller microquakes, it looks like. Only one earthquake here. Well, one or two, I would say. Across the Alaska area, as far as 2.5 and above goes, very minimal movement. Across Japan, we did see some activity earlier this morning. It looks like 4.6 and a 4.2. Things are kind of taking a little standstill here across the Western Pacific while things get interesting here across the West Coast and, of course, the South America region. When things come to a halt out here across the Western Pacific, it's a pretty easy scenario. Look to the east. And that's where you will see your elevated activity and potentially some larger scale activity here across the North American plate region. We'll continue to watch this. So further down south into the Vanuatu area, 4.6. It looks like that is the latest earthquake here in the last couple hours, 10 kilometers deep. Of course, we did see some deeper movement quake activity into Fiji. That earthquake earlier this morning of 4.7. Goodness, 653 kilometers deep, applying quite a bit of strain around this horseshoe bend. That's a major player in producing some large earthquake activity. But at the same time, when you study history, deeper earthquake activity tends to not only trigger the potential for earthquake activity upstream, but also here across this plate boundary around the Vanuatu area. And that's obviously what we've seen today. Sumatra area did see some activity early this morning of 5.1. Further into the Indian Ocean, that looks like a 5.2 earlier this evening. Out here across the port region into a fracture zone. Divergent boundaries taking place out here. It looks like the divergent boundaries are a little bit more active here across the not only the Atlantic but also into the Indian Ocean area. So things are kind of brewing underneath the region here. 4.0 Afghanistan region. It looks like eastern Afghanistan, almost 200 kilometers deep. Let's see here. What else we may have? jumping into the EMSC model map here. Aside from the movement here in the Iceland area, for the most part, let's see, what do we got here? I think USGS reported that Central Mid-Atlantic Ridge. I'm just looking for maybe anything that may be out of the ordinary here. Across the Mediterranean, mostly some smaller earthquake activity. It looks like 2s and 3s. Again, I'm still kind of working on the Earthquake 3D globe in hopes, I would say, of getting the EMSC model involved back in that. But for now, when you click on the EMSC RSS feed, it literally freezes up the globe, and that means there's no data out here. So it's unfortunate because I kind of like to keep the USGS along with the EMSC data up here. But for now, I'll just have to keep the USGS going here, and we'll deal with it as time goes on here. Let's see what we got for the space weather activity. There we go. It's been a long day. I slept a little bit last night, but I did not get enough sleep. It's been, I don't know, I went to bed about 3:30 or so after coming in from the airport. Woke up at about 10. That's just not enough sleep for me. I think I need a very good night of sleep. Look at this. What do you guys see? It's a face of the sun once again. And, well, we got the two eyes here, 23 and 22. These are actually coronal holes, along with a bigger region down here, 21. Kind of giving a face of, surprisement, it looks like, right? Wouldn't that be the face of, what's going on here? The two eyes and the mouth. But far as that activity being affected here on Earth, that's, you can pretty much discredit that. There's not a whole lot of effects that will happen from this type of setup. Let's check out the flaring activity. It looks like we are currently seeing some flaring in the upper C flare category, almost peeking out into the M flare category, and it looks as though that's coming from this regional sunspot here that I kind of told folks to watch. Right, this is a regional sunspot that has been growing. It's very big. 3359 down here with another neighbor, 3358. But it looks like this regional sunspot here is producing some flaring currently as we speak. It does look fairly complex, so we'll watch out for some further flaring. Also up in the northern hemisphere, we got two other sunspots that we need to pay attention to that looks fairly complex for some flaring. Right now, 99% chance for a C flare, M flare at 30, X flare around the 5% chance. But I think one of our main threats will be from 3359 down here that's currently flaring. Let's see, what do we got? Nothing major going on in the solar, at least the solar storm department. Let's see what we got for the Storm Prediction Center here. Current day 1, current day 2. This is going to be for Friday, it looks like. So Thursday, tomorrow, looks like a little bit of elevated conditions here across the eastern Colorado and western Kansas area. As far as tornado probability goes, it looks like maybe a 10% chance of tornadoes. I think quite a few storm chasers are going to be out there tomorrow, chasing out there in eastern Colorado. So heads up if you were out there. Doesn't look like at least no major population areas at risk. I've been out there a couple times in the past, and there's a whole lot of openness roads, but there's still people out there. There's still people. There's still families. And a 10% chance is something you want to pay attention to out here. So if you are out there in eastern Colorado, it says no major population center at risk, but still, Again, there's families out there. You guys got to watch the sky tomorrow in eastern Colorado, western Kansas area. So just a heads up. Let's see if we got any major changes going on here across the North American area. I'm going to go over here to the regions. This is from Tropical Tidbits. This gives you a good indicator of what's going on here as far as the weather activity goes. I don't like the H out here in the Pacific. That means high and dry and hot along the west coast. So we're going to bring up the symbol and look at that. I don't like it. Of course, I always thought that, and I always knew that summer was going to come around, and obviously it is here in the west coast. This is currently taking place here across the area of the North Pacific area. We do have some ridging going on here that's going to bring some hotter temperatures here across California, as you can see here on the map. Cooler, wetter weather across the eastern portion of the country come mid-July. But as far as any permanent, powerful systems, I'm not seeing it out here across the area. I'm hoping that we get a little bit of troughing out here across the west coast towards the end of July. It looks like maybe something may be building. I don't know. Hard to tell. We do need some cooler weather out here because I'm done with the heat already. I'm not even joking. At least out in Texas, when I was out there over the past week, you get the heat. You get the, obviously the daytime heating. But that's followed up by thunderstorm activity. It kind of cools you down out there. Here along Northern California area, it just cooks. And it's not good. 73 outside right now. It's cooling down slightly. But I don't know. I'm kind of over this summer already. I'm not even joking. It could just be me being tired. So I guess I'll find out tomorrow. All right, let's see what we got here as far as regions go. Western Atlantic. Let's put this thing in motion. See if we got any tropical development. You guys remember a week back? I was talking about tropical development building up out here in the Gulf. Well, it's the around the 4th or 5th. It's the 5th of July. Tomorrow's the 6th, and that has it's pretty much gone. Did not come to pass. So these weather models are very sometimes they're not accurate. But far as the forecast goes, I'm not seeing any major tropical development going on out here across the Gulf or the Atlantic for now. And I believe the El Nino pattern here tends to push off the potential for tropical development. So that means less hurricanes out here across the Gulf and the eastern states. A look at the buoys here. No magical buoys in event mode here, which is good news. GeoNet servers here 2 hours ago, 2.7, 2.3. Looks like a little bit of earthquake activity across New Zealand. Not really seeing anything major going on yet. It's kind of in the quiet zone currently. But, things getting on the deeper side here, kind of pushing transfer of the pressure activity here across the Vanuatu area. I think, though, right now, with the elevated activity here across the eastern Pacific, excuse me, we'll definitely watch here across the Mexico area, potentially up into the Southern California region for some further movement. It's unfortunately the USGS does not show a lot of the earthquake activity that's taken place here across the central area of the Middle America Trench, and that's a bummer. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes, I guess. But I'm gonna try to get, hopefully here soon, the EMSC model data back up and running. Apparently it's available to the paid members. Well, I'm a paid member here, but it's not available to me. And when you update feeds, it magically shows that it's been updated. But I've tried this time and time again, and I cannot get the EMSC data to pop up here. So I'm left with the USGS data, and that's sometimes it gets skipped as far as important data, earthquake activity as to what's going on here around the region. All right, folks, we're going to jump off here. I'm ready to call it a night. Live stream, of course, is up and running. If it goes down in the middle of the night, I will obviously get it back up when it does go down. But until then, I hope everyone has a great night. Please stay safe out there. And we got Thursday, right? Thursday coming up here in a few minutes, at least here along the West Coast. We'll catch you guys back here sometime tomorrow morning. Have a good one, folks.